Welcome to the Queens of the Neuroverse Podcast. I'm Dr. Kalin Johnson. Join myself and my wife, Marnie Bothmer, as we make sense of this neurodivergent life so you can feel empowered to reign over your neuroverse. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Queens of the Neuroverse Podcast. I'm Kalin.
I'm Marnie.
And we are here to share a little bit about our neurodivergent lives to see if it can help you curate a life that feels fitting and joyful and fun for you, neurodivergent individual out there. Yes. So
creating a little camaraderie.
That's exactly
neurodivergent.
Exactly. You know, when in doing this podcast, when I think about like, what is that like motivator for doing this? I always just think about like, what would the world be like if we had more healthy, awesome, confident, neurodivergent people?
It'd be so much more fun.
Especially neurodivergent women. No shade to my dudes out there, but you know, especially identifying and supporting neurodivergent women hasn't really been there. But what would the world be like? I think it would be pretty stellar. So hoping this sets off that butterfly effect to where you feel awesome in your life and well, and can just do all the things.
Love it.
So usually, you know, Marnie and I will kind of talk about some wins, challenges, things that were like funny that popped up in our week that we can, you know, really relate back to our neurodivergence. So when we're thinking about this last week, Marnie, what popped up for you as far as kind of a challenge in these last couple of weeks here?
Yeah, and we kind of chatted beforehand, but I think that one of my biggest challenges, and it's been my challenge for a little while, not just this week, we've mentioned multiple times, however many episodes we've had, but that we have an infant who obviously she's growing, so now she's 8 months old, and
almost 9.
I know.
She's so big.
Yeah, she's so big. Yeah, which has been great, but I feel like especially the first 5-6 months even, maybe a little less, but I feel like the first big chunk, you know, it was just kind of like figuring out what we were doing with that, trying to get ourselves into somewhat of a routine. But also one thing that I struggle with is like sometimes feeling trapped, having a child or not having a child. And so adding her into the mix, definitely creates a little bit of that sensation where it's like, hey, you know, she has like short wake windows, so you can go do something, but only within this like hour, or she might need to eat in this hour, or I don't know. So sometimes my brain kind of gets this like stuck feeling. And so I notice when I have that I get very like dopamine seeky. And it can be through various things. Oftentimes Marnie's ends up being through snacks. So I'm like, oh, I saw that Myrtle and Cypress has cinnamon rolls on Tuesdays. Probably should go get one.
Coffee shop here in Nebraska.
So yeah, that's a thing. Or I mean, it can be anything. That just seems to be like, I feel like my go-to because it's like quick and it's easy and it doesn't have to be like a full on, like I'm taking work off to go on a trip or like whatever, but I just like can notice when my life feels a little more like that I get a little more dopamine seeky. So I think honestly that's just been a little bit more of my challenge recently. I feel like I've done a better job of navigating that, but that's not where we are right now. More of a challenge of it.
Well, and what's so hard is like, again, so, you know, like with especially like the ADHD portion of like neurodivergence is often the brain is trying to get and to seek out dopamine. And when you have like a phase or a time period of life or in your day where it can be difficult for dopamine just to kind of present itself, then your brain's like, I need it. And I know, like for you, that kind of like, excitement, I guess, like your brain, I feel like has a really hard time finding dopamine in consistency.
Yeah.
Where I will say, my brain leans, you know, I'm ADHD. So autistic as well. And a lot of times my brain kind of leans a little bit more that autistic way where I actually find a lot of dopamine in that consistency in like knowing like what to expect. And
I like it a little bit, you know, like, I mean, I think like you say ADHD people, right? We need routine. It helps me to function well. And especially, I mean, like fitness, like I'm a personal trainer. So like that is one of my passions and hobbies. And like, you need some consistency there. So like, I like that to a point, but sometimes when every day start, you know, it's like, okay, then I finish and then we're going to hang out and then I'll work out and then you work out. And then we go on and walk with our dog and then we make dinner and then we go to bed. And it's just like, sometimes I'm like, okay.
And my brain hears that and it's like, oh, and then I get to go work out and then I get to play with my daughter on the floor and then I get to like eat with my family and then I get to go to bed. Like I honestly like there's some it's just, again, like interesting. I don't know like which kind of way you lean,
Yeah,
but like
different perspectives.
depending on like your neurodivergence and what things like give you dopamine, that certain things can be like really, really challenging or really like life-giving. And this one is specifically can be a challenge for us because like we, you know, are having we're doing the same thing, but our experience of it is vastly, vastly different because of just how our brains are able to get dopamine.
I noticed that certain things make it feel like better or worse. Like when the weather's nice outside, even if I'm doing the same thing all the time, that's easier for me to not feel dopamine seeky. But I guess part of it too is like then I can go out on a walk. So one thing I've been doing is like when I'm done, like when our nanny leaves or whatnot, I'll take our dog and our daughter on like a walk, and that like helps. But recently the heat index has been like 115 degrees, and so we can't do that. And so then I'll notice more of that like trap feeling that I'm like, what do we do? We're gonna eat some oatmeal again. We're gonna eat some solids. Like I feel like it's just like kind of like okay, I need to find something else. But the weather is helpful, so you can't always rely on the weather, obviously. But.
And I will say, you know, I obviously still have ADHD too, and I feel like my impulsivity or the dopamine kind of seeking need, and impulsivity a lot of times is related to that need for dopamine, comes out just like. I'm like good consistency for like a long time, like for weeks, months, and then all of a sudden just I want to eat it, and it just like, and also like I always want something big.
Yeah.
Like I like sure like sometimes it's like I want like a brownie or something like fun like that, or let me go and do I don't know, go bowling. I don't know, like just something like random. But usually my brain is like go big or go home. It's like all in, all
which
out.
I feel like we've both been having a little bit of lately.
So that was when I thought about like the like something just funny that was so neurodivergent this week. The first thing that I thought of was how, so this upcoming weekend, we were going to go down to Kansas City to see my family and to just kind of hang out, whatever. And we just started feeling like really overwhelmed by it. And we were like, you know what? I don't think this is the time. We're going on a big trip here in about a month. Felt really, really, you know, okay, not the time to do so. Let's pull back. And then over this last week, we were like, so let's cancel that trip, but actually let's book a last minute flight down to Florida to go to Walt Disney World for like 48 hours. And that is so our neurodivergent brains to be like, oh, this thing that others would probably find totally manageable.
Yeah. Oh, you can't go to Kansas City, which from us is a 3-hour drive.
Right. Yeah. Which AKA really for us is that trip isn't giving us enough dopamine.
Right. And there's also more, like, this is just a little aside with that too, but like for us, again, we're really big Walt Disney World fans. And so that's also like, we used to always say that like that was our home and like Omaha was like our temporary place of residence. But like, it's so easy for us to be there. So it's not like, oh, how do we figure out transportation here? Or how do we figure out where do we eat? Or what do we do? Whereas I feel like sometimes just going anywhere else, you kind of have that. What should we eat? So I feel like that also like Walt Disney World is like easy for us. Well, so sometimes like that's part of it. It gives me dopamine and I also don't have to like think about.
Well, it's exactly what we were just talking about in that like it offers you some of that consistency.
Yeah.
That feels good. Totally. But then it gives you some of that dopamine also, or that kind of
because I don't want it to be like so challenging. You know, like honestly, sometimes that's fun. Like, you know, if all of a sudden we decided to go to like Beijing, that would be too much for my brain right now. It's like, all right, gotta figure out transportation, figure out a whole new currency. Well, you know.
Yeah, well again, like kind of makes
that would be too much.
Like processing it as we're talking about it. But like going to Walt Disney World for us then, since we've gone so many times, there's always those factors that you can't necessarily plan for or that are different. And so that gives you all of that dopamine, but there's so many things then that you do know that are consistent that you don't have to think about. And so it takes way less executive functioning where planning a trip to like Beijing, oh my gosh, there's so many questions. There's so many different things that are put in front of us that we've not navigated before.
It would take too much. It would too much bandwidth right now.
Yeah, it would be super challenging. And I promise you we would both end up in total like paralysis and like functional freeze where like with Walt Disney World, like then because we are very well versed in it, not as many decisions that we have to make, and the ones that we do, then they just seem fun and exciting. And
like, oh yeah, we're gonna eat at Tusker House or
exactly
Mickey's. I don't know.
Exactly. And the same with kids. No Shave Kansas City. Nearby, fun, but like the fun wasn't funning to the dopamine level then that we needed it to be.
And then like the logistics, right? The logistics were like, okay, we have to drive for 3 hours with a teething 9-month-old. That's hard, but really we would still have to fly 3 hours with a teething 9-month-old. month old, but it felt like the payoff was more worth it.
Payoff was more worth it. And then I will say for me...
Side note, we didn't book the trip.
We didn't.
Yeah.
Sorry, we just say, which we can talk about too with the impulsivity piece, because, actually, I'll roll into that. So the thing too, I think that's important with ADHD and autism to recognize around impulsivity is that, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that you kind of have to, like, decide, like, how you navigate it and what response to that impulsivity is adaptive versus maladaptive versus just being like to get rid of it. That's not realistic. So when I'm working with patients, it's not like, oh, let's just like get rid of your impulsivity. It's a bad thing, but like, let's plan for it. Like you need impulsivity rest. Like I had somebody who loved to impulsively buy things, but was getting into a lot of like financial trouble with that. And so we would plan for, okay, every month you're going to set aside, I think for her, we just set aside like $200. And that $200, you get to do whatever you want with it. And if you don't use it that month, you get to roll it over into the next month and you get to just be impulsive with it. She loved going to Target and just like impulsively shopping. But instead of just saying, let's not do that, that's not going to happen. Right. Let's just plan for it and decide like an amount that feels like adaptive for your life and feels like solid. So
although can I just like throw this, like I like that idea and I think that's really helpful, although sometimes with the ADHD brain I feel like even that can feel like a restriction. The right, it's like, oh no, I'm thinking $200, so my brain would probably be like, need to spend 202,
which is also fine.
Yeah,
because I think
like,
that's also knowing that too is like having something like it's so like system over routine. So it's so hard again, like you give yourself some structure, but then you have to give yourself some loose,
some like
structure.
Flexibility within the structure.
When you know
it's too rigid, even if it's a fun rigidity. I actually talked to my therapist once about like my snack. I'm gonna go get a fun snack, and she's like, well, what if you set it up on Saturdays that you'll go get a snack? And I was like, it's gonna make me want one on Friday. Like it's just like, that's just how my brain works, because it feels like I set a rule that I can have it on Saturday.
It's back to track.
And so then on Thursday, I feel like the rule's there that I can't have it on Thursday. Yeah, it's like, no, I need to be able to go get it on Thursday.
Right.
Then maybe Saturday I won't want it,
Yes.
I probably will. But
Well, and I guess with her and that and like piece, one of the, I think the things we were navigating that with is that she didn't have, if she didn't use it, that it got to roll over, so which could kind of create then this, I would say illusion, but not really an illusion, real life piece of like, you could spend more than that. But like, that was just a way for her. And she was, I'll say, one that was probably a lot more like, she liked a little bit of that firmer structure. But yeah, if you need it looser, it could be like within a range or whatever. Or you can just say 200 and just know like internally that like, I'm okay if I go up to, maybe 15, whatever, that it doesn't have to be so hard. Just kind of whatever your brain.
I just all of a sudden had this like panic. It's like, oh, 200. I'd be like, oh, you don't want to spend $200.
And my brain is like, that just offers the clarity, which sometimes makes me go like but no, my brain can totally feel trapped and things like that too. So it's just, again, funny that like where sometimes we're a walking juxtaposition as neurodivergent people.
I think, at least for me. But
and totally depends on the situation or the context of the situation, where our brain's like, I'm totally good, and where our brain's like, screw that. Like, I'm out.
I think I'm speaking for you also, but we've been together for a while, but I feel like for us, it feels like, especially with the impulsivity, that at least having the choice or having the option to do it makes it feel better.
Yes.
And I know like, because I mean, in theory, like we were like, we could do this. Like we could go to Walt Disney. We're like, we priced, we actually didn't like hotels, but if we would have, the flights weren't great prices, and it wouldn't but it wouldn't have put us like in the hole. We just both also had like, okay, but also it would be better to spend our money on these things that we have and whatever. But it felt better to actually look and say, I could do this. I can cancel clients. I can move whatever logistically from this day to this day, instead of like, can't do it, that makes it feel like it's not a choice and not an option. And that feels way more panicky and restricting in the brain. But for me, even like when I feel, again, like in my day, that day to day of like, oh my gosh, whatever, sometimes like I just need to leave. And so I'm like, great, I'm just going to take Indy, our daughter, and we're going to go to Target. It's not really exciting, but it's like, I just need to like do something. But having like the idea of like, I'm not trapped. Like I do have this option. It helps my brain a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that like, within the idea of like it being a choice and us deciding not to do it, considering it, actually doing it helps, I think, your brain sometimes like analyze, oh, what's actually going on? Like, I think that was when we really identified, oh, we're both just like, we're ready for a break. We're ready for some dopamine. This also happens to us a lot too. I'd say both of our brains do this.
Before a trip.
When a trip is coming up, like the waiting.
It's like anticipatory, like, you know, you're going to have a fun break, and all of a sudden everything else feels like heavier and not fun.
All of a sudden your brain's like, well, I want the break now.
Yeah.
Like,
that always happens with fun foods. Like, honestly, we used to have that. Like, or if I'd be like, I don't know, we have this event, like, the Super Bowl is on Sunday, and I'm like, I want Pizza Friday. Like, it's just like,
Once the brain knows it's there, like the patience, which patience is not something that usually comes with ADHD, is really difficult. So I do feel like sometimes what I think one of the things that we've learned in becoming the queens of our own Neuroverse is when we do have a trip or something coming up, that we actually do need to hold space to do dopamine giving things prior. That's not just like, okay, I'm not gonna do anything dopamine giving. Like, I'm gonna eat really strict.
We used to do that.
But
like, there was a period where we did that. And then when we would go to Walt Disney World, we would eat also, I mean, not this is just about food, but like, again, it's a really easy dopamine thing, right? So we would eat all the sweets and all the whatever, and then it felt terrible.
Or we'd want to spend a ton on like doing all the special events, all the special things, because it's like, well, I just deprived myself of for the last month, 2 months. And that is where ADHD especially, restriction.
That's awful.
Restriction mindset.
Awful. Well, and then we'd come home and it would be way worse when we would come home. Like, people talk about, like, this is Disney again. This could be anything, whatever you're into, but we call it, like, Disney depression. So, like, when you come home from Walt Disney World, like, you just like, oh, life is not whatever. It doesn't feel that bad. I mean, it's still sad, but it's not as intense if you allow yourself to have dopamine before you go. But when we would, like, restrict it, and then you get back home and you're like, oh, now I just have to eat tilapia and broccoli, and I have to go to work and work out and go to bed early. It's like, you just can't do that.
So one of the things you can do, if this is something that hits for you, like, plan fun things like leading up and when you get home. So not thinking like, now the fun has to end. It can be something like, I'm gonna go, I don't know, to a tiki bar here locally when I get home, or I'm gonna go to this concert or whatever. Again, like, obviously noting, 'cause I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this podcast too, maybe you're like, have some burnout or have hypermobility, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic issues too. Obviously there's kind of a little bit of balance with that, but just whatever like fits what you're able to do, finding and planning that dopamine. Do not go to that restrictive mindset. You will
it's not helpful.
Regret that. Your brain will fight that.
Which I feel like, so we're kind of talking about like, what's been hard for you, what's been good for you.
Well, it kind of wins.
And I feel like personally, I think like actually, and I guess like this is personally, but also I think collectively, again, we've done a good job of that. So again, we've been together for a long time. We've known each other for a long time.
We started dating in 2009.
Yeah, but known each other since 2006.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time. So I think like one thing that, I don't know, I mean, I don't hear other people describe us, but one thing that I feel like we are good at doing, at least known for, at least what I think we're known for, is I think we're really good at like just creating magic and creating fun within our day-to-day. And I think that we did a decent job at that, trying to, when we had an infant, like, I mean, she's still an infant, but like a tiny infant. But I feel like now that we are kind of getting into that routine, I feel like we're doing a better job of getting back to it. And so even like, I mean, this sounds so dumb. And I feel like when you look at something like Instagram and people tell you to do fun things and you see this stuff, it's like, eye roll. But I feel like honestly though, like we've been doing like, having like more random dance parties. And, you know, one thing that both of us sometimes would randomly do on a day, like we don't want to be at work, or like, we'd be like, hey, like play like Disney music in the background or whatever, which like isn't for your like my client, but it's for me. Or like we're gonna wear Disney clothes or whatever, and so like both of us would like collectively be wearing like park wear, and so it's just like a nod to my own brain that like, hey, I'm still creating magic, I'm still making fun things happen at home. It doesn't have to be I ate a whole pan of brownies. I don't need a whole pan of brownies, but like, you know, it doesn't have, but it also could consist of that. It also could be like, hey, let's also make a fun snack. But trying to find, I think, just like more wins and more magic within our house. I think that we've been doing a good job of that.
Yeah, it's really, I think, easy then with like neurodivergence to be like, okay, so the way that we cope with the things then when we are not getting the dopamine we want, we tend to just like put our head down and just like power through, thinking that's how we're going to get ourselves to the end in a good way, but that's how we end up with burnout. Right. And also it makes sense that we do that. That's literally how like, especially the school system is set up to say, hey, like, just push through your classes. Christmas break will be here soon. Hey, just push through this test. So it's all about like waiting it out time-wise, and we just kind of like power through, yet again, that's what leads to burnout. So kind of we had to both like shift that perspective and kind of check ourselves often to be like, no, like how can I give myself like dopamine constantly throughout the day in these like smaller little bits
and smaller bits. I know also, right, that's a big critique right now of everybody being like, oh, we're in this dopamine nation because of like, you can just get things quickly from Amazon, it's on Instagram, whatever. So then people are like, do these dopamine fasts. But for somebody who has ADHD, it's like, that's also a shitty thing. So please don't tell us to do dopamine fast. Fuck you.
It's back to restriction.
Right. But I think more again, like, it just doesn't have to be that I'm like drinking vodka while I'm training my clients. Like,
it's just smashing, 12 brownies.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Like I was just thinking about that with like, having constant dopamine, but also like, again, by sometimes having a dance party or by wearing a fun shirt or whatever. Like having things to look forward to is good also, of course, but sorry, I kind of hijacked that.
No, what we're trying to really do then is avoiding the pendulum swings and like really trying to find just kind of like lower level dopamine and being okay with that. And sometimes that is something with the ADHD brain. You do have to talk it through that. Like I don't need the big thing. I think that's why we didn't actually like go ahead and go to Walt Disney World because it was like, oh, that's like, we want that thing that's so big because we are in this little state of depravity with dopamine. So like, how can we just like give ourselves little sprinkles of it like all day? So like she mentioned, like even things like dopamine dressing. Like today, if you're watching this, I'm wearing a t-shirt that has Kermit the Frog on it, and he's like Gap modeling, and just like every time I look at it, I get little bits of dopamine from it. Listening to like new albums maybe, or finding a fun podcast, or I started a new book that's been really great. It's all about language and cults. It's called Cultish if you want to check it out. It's super good. But like just little things like that, or maybe we're gonna make like a new food at home, or we got to do sparkling waters, just like all these different like sensory experiences that give us little bits of dopamine can really help to curb some of that dopamine seeking. And again, doesn't last necessarily like that way for forever, but like it helps
sometimes
it
things
not
hit better than others, of course. Sometimes I'm like, nope, didn't work, and I am just still, I don't know, whatever,
feeling that way. Which then again, I think sometimes to be the queen of your own Neuroverse really demands you being like a researcher of your own life and experience all the time. There's never like a set answer. It's kind of that the only thing constant in life is that nothing is constant, and like change is the only constant. So even when you find something that works or hits, that's only in the context of that moment.
We just had if anybody follows women's soccer, the Euro Cups were just on. They just ended last weekend, but that was really fun because like those usually last for like a month, and because the games were happening in the UK, actually they weren't, they're happening in Switzerland, but they were always on like at 2 p.m. in the US, and so that was great. Usually that's the time that I am free, and so being able to like watch those, that was a really like I felt like that made my July.
Sports are a big thing where we get a lot of ADHD like dopamine seeking from. And I think also kind of the autistic side, like hyper focus, like sports and things have always been a hyper focus for me, and like athleticism, and obviously she's a personal trainer, so that too. So like that's just something that fits for us. So like we're kind of always just like following different sports to be able to kind of get little dopamine that way. Which maybe it's not sports for you, but like whatever kind of that that again that special interest is, and like if you can kind of engage with that, that's a great way to get dopamine too. But I think that like really coming out of this and like thinking about like, okay, why does this matter? How can I play this in my own life? Is to basically notice if you're doing like in that like kind of head down, push through, restrict piece, that like if you do that and then you find yourself like really feeling unsettled or dopamine seeking, you gotta step out of that like super restrictive
it's not
mindset.
Good, man. It's not helpful. But sometimes too, I mean, like I don't know what's like impulsive or whatnot. I feel like that can be different things for different people. But if you're somebody who's currently working, like take the freaking day off and go do something. It doesn't have to be like insanely impulsive.
No.
You're not quitting your job. You're not just not showing up. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like in my own brain and yours too, it's like just having that choice of like, what's the thing that feels like routine that I just need a break from? It probably still means the next day is going to be hard, because it just is sometimes, but sometimes it just feels like, I don't know, you just need that like, hey, I did it. I did this thing. I went and I read at a coffee shop for, an hour or whatever. I don't know, like that, my brain likes that.
Yeah. Or even like, it can even be a little impulsive with like, noises you're making, like in the kitchen, like vocal stems or like dances, like again, like think that neurodivergent experience is like, we tend to just like hole up and like hold everything that we actually want to do in.
I like
and
that.
it's just letting whatever you want to do out. So like move, like I'm sure my somatic therapist out there would like love this, but like move in whatever way just feels like you want to do, even if it's like
silly.
doing something.
I mean, that sounds so dumb, but it really is helpful.
Because if we just like hold, I mean, that's the idea of masking, right? Like we're just trying to like filter constantly, like code switch ourselves for like whatever situations, even sometimes when we're at home.
Totally.
Because we get so far removed from what our bodies actually.
People say like if you watch, you know, like 5 and 6 year olds, maybe even younger, 3, 4 year olds, like how silly they are. And like that used to be us. And I was like, when did we stop being that? And it's like probably when people were like, hey, okay, now you're older, let's stop being
I think
that.
that's actually one of the coolest things about being a neurodivergent parent. Like obviously the challenges tend to be with a lot of like overwhelm, executive functioning, sensory overwhelm, things like that. But one of the coolest things is getting to watch this little person just constantly do whatever she needs to do to like
respond to her nervous system.
To respond to her body.
She does a lot of
dopamine. And just like, what is she doing? It's like she's regulating. She's doing what she needs to do to give herself some like interest in that.
Same what we used to talk about, not even having a kid, but having a dog, like watching our dog just get the zoomies all of a sudden. And it's like, oh yeah, you're totally just regulating. You have all this energy and pent up energy. Whereas we get pent up energy and then we go sit down and, you know, sit at a work meeting. So, or we get right in the car and cut people off or go vote against your rights or something, you know?
I know that'll be one of the hardest things. I know, at least for me.
Watching that shift.
Yes. As a parent, like whenever somehow there's that like awareness or that thing that even if here at home we have this full acceptance of like listening to your body and doing what you need to do, moving in whatever way, like finding those little bits of dopamine, there's of course she's gonna interact with the outside world and probably have that first moment of where you see her like mask it and I'm gonna like like, even though again full realist, understand that. Our hope with that, and I'll say to you too, is like you're applying any of this into your own life, is just still knowing that you have the choice. You have the choice when you mask. You have the choice when you unmask. You have the choice in how you find dopamine. And just recognizing though what's actually going on, that like, oh, I'm responding this way right now because I have totally just like hold up like who I am. Which I know last time we talked a lot about like the demand avoidance. That is why like for me, if there's something like, oh, like we randomly will be like, hey, let's go here and like do something with these people, or like let's go do whatever thing, that sometimes my brain is like, oh, I have to mask. And there's like this panic of like, I have to hold up who I am again. And I think that's where especially a lot of autistic people, I think, are like anxieties around being social aren't always just the social anxiety itself, but is this like, oh, I'm supposed to mask, or I have to mask. I don't get to like be that version of myself. So sometimes I feel like we have to like help our brains be like, oh wait, nope. Like,
can be a mask.
I can unmask, I can whatever, which I will say not easier said than done, because then the brain's like, but that's a threat because now I may be ostracized, not going to fit in. Like there's the rejection piece. So it's this big that we're constantly trying to navigate, but still something though that I guess is worth navigating and like helping your body find something that feels both unmasked, comfortable, and less stressful. And that also means like within that, again, like finding the dopamine, a lot of times my dopamine is less going out because I have a lot more of that like masking piece with the autism that can feel more stressful to me. So I think sometimes being in my own space is less about being in my own space, but being like, this is where I am most confident in being me and not like putting myself into this little box, putting that mask on, which is, I'm still on, you know, my own unmasking journey. And I think probably will be for forever, because that balance is not an easy thing to strike as a neurodivergent person. But yeah, so hopefully this helped you kind of identify maybe where in your life you may be dopamine seeking, and where you can maybe...
Also, like, you're not alone in that.
Totally.
I feel like that's... personally, like, I hate being alone in things.
Yeah.
She actually doesn't mind it as much. but yeah, so just knowing, though, like, it's a common thing, and I think we all have our own struggles with it.
Exactly. And it's constant. Again, like, both of us, like, we do this work for a living. We're with people in these areas all the time. And it's still something that we're constantly navigating. I guess I don't think it's something that you ever become like good at.
Right.
I think it's something you just become a little bit more confident in helping yourself navigate.
Totally. Yeah.
Like there's no perfection.
Just sometimes like go eat your brownie, go take your Walt Disney World trip. I will say too, not this isn't the point of this, but like there's a period where we did do that for a while. I think we had talked about that before. And that was part of that. It was like almost just also proving that you can do it, because if you also always say no to it, then your brain's like, I know you're not going to do it. So
exactly. You got to say yes to that impulsivity sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's fine.
Yeah, I had somebody one time get on a call with me, and they were having a lot of symptoms of like long COVID, were dealing with chronic illness as well as neurodivergence. And they were like, I just want to go to the mountains today. I just want to go hike. And I was like, do it.
Yeah.
Like go. But isn't that unreasonable for my body? All these things. And I was like, sure, but we're always denying this like impulsivity dopamine rest that you need.
Yeah.
That is also
it's like
damaging.
Build, you know, I feel like the need and desire to do it.
Yep.
And then when you feel, like, I think that's what some of my stuff, like when I feel like I'm so restricted because I have this infant who, and she only has an hour wake window, and so I can't leave the house. And then I was like, I just need to leave the house. Like, this is silly. Well, I'm just like building it up in my brain more than it even needs to be.
Well, when we talk about health and wellness too, stressors are all equal. So like, okay, I'm eating well, that's going to help my body, or like anti-inflammatory, and I'm doing all these like quote self-care things. I'm doing my stretches or whatever.
I feel restricted.
Right. I was going to say, but if you still feel restricted internally, you are still inflamed. Your body still says threat. It's just saying there's a threat to our choice. And like now we're trapped. So that is where, again, you have to constantly, it's almost like chasing and like identifying like what's stressing me out now. And then like do what you need to do to care for that. I always think like one time, you know, Marnie has multiple sclerosis, and it was early on in that, like shortly after your diagnosis, and you were like really being on like with your eating and like
dairy free
hydration and all these things that are supposed to be helpful for MS. And you had that like breakdown moment in the car, and I was like, what's up? And you were like, I don't want to think about drinking water today. And that was the moment that like really hit me of kind of like, yeah, okay, let's not then.
Yeah, like pissed me off. I remember we were actually going to the hospital to talk to our doctor about doing IUI.
Yeah.
And I was like getting a water bottle to put in the car, and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. So also know too that even the things that are quote good for you sometimes aren't good for you if your internal system is not experiencing them that way. And sometimes we have to say, forget it and go do the thing that feels good. So yeah, like forget water today. Yeah, fine. Just won't. Like it'll be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Because then there's the motivation again on other days to like want to do it. It feels like something you have to do.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yep.
It has to be, again, back to that choice.
Yep.
So where's the choice point? Figuring out where you have choice and showing yourself if you have choice. And that's, I'm going to say, if anything, the only should. Otherwise, like if your brain's like, but I should be doing that. I should, whatever. You just put yourself back in a box, restriction.
Yeah.
ADHD brain's done.
Yeah. We're on a spinning rock. The world's going to crap. You can eat a brownie. It's fine. It's fine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Queens of the Neuroverse podcast. Check back next month when we chat here again. I'll chat with you guys soon. Bye. Loved you all.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Queens of the Neuroverse podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to the podcast. If you're ready for individualized support, head on over to KalinJohnson.com and MarnieBothmer.com to work with us one-on-one. Reign and repeat, my queens. Reign and repeat. None of the information presented in this podcast should be used or applied personally without consulting with your doctor about your symptoms, diagnoses, treatment, and the safety of applying any information discussed. All the information discussed reflects only the experience of the host and should be used for educational purposes only. This podcast does not replace the guidance and/or prescription of a physician. By listening to this podcast, your acceptance of this medical disclaimer is implied.